Oh, who let this beggar girl in?
Brittany Wilson stepped forward, her face contorted with disgust.
What is this? A Halloween costume?
She circled the woman, slowly, every employee watching.
Cotton.
She pinched the sleeve, dropped it like trash.
Did you pick it up in the trash can?
She laughed.
This is Ashford and Whitmore, not Walmart.
She pointed to the dress.
That rag wouldn't even be usable as a dust cloth here, darling.
Giggles erupted from the staff. The woman didn't flinch. She looked at Brittany and said gently,
I want to see the silk scarves, please.
not angry, just calm. That calmness infuriated Brittany. Then the CEO rushed over, bowed deeply.
Madam AG.
Brittany's legs gave way, her face drained. Who was this woman? And why did the CEO bow? What comes next? Brittany will never recover from. Let's rewind. 45 minutes before that satisfying moment. Washington, D.C., a Tuesday in late spring. The sun sat high over K Street, bouncing off limestone buildings and black government SUVs. 2 blocks from the Capitol, the Ashford and Whitmore flagship store rose like a marble temple, 120 years old. Crystal chandeliers in the lobby, a grand piano playing soft jazz by the elevator. The air smelled like French perfume and fresh-cut lilies. Every surface gleamed. Every employee wore pearl-colored uniforms pressed to perfection. This was not a store. This was a statement. A place where senators' wives browsed cashmere on lunch breaks, where diplomats sent assistants to pick up anniversary gifts, where the cheapest item on the floor, a silk pocket square, cost $300. And right now, an unmarked black SUV was pulling up to the curb outside. The rear door opened. A woman stepped out. She was black, mid-50s, natural curls, no makeup except a touch of lip balm, a thin gold cross around her neck, the only jewelry she wore. Her dress was navy cotton, a simple wrap, $60 from a department store her mother used to clean. Her name was Danielle Sinclair, and she was the Attorney General of the United States, the first black woman to ever hold that title. She turned to the man in the passenger seat, Special Agent Gregory Hollis, her head of security detail. He was already frowning. "Give me 45 minutes," she said. "Stay across the street." Hollis shook his head. "Ma'am, the Attorney General does not just stroll into retail without protection." She smiled. "Today she does. It's my niece's graduation. I want to buy her something myself." Hollis opened his mouth to protest. She was already walking away. Her flat shoes made no sound on the sidewalk. No entourage, no staff, no cameras. Just a woman in a cotton dress walking into a luxury store like anyone else. But Danielle Sinclair was not anyone else. She was the daughter of Eleanor Sinclair, a hotel housekeeper in Baltimore who spent 30 years making beds, scrubbing bathrooms, and folding towels for people who never once looked her in the eye. When Danielle was 11 years old, her mother was accused of stealing a guest's diamond bracelet. The hotel manager didn't investigate, didn't ask questions. He marched Eleanor through the lobby, in front of the Sunday brunch crowd, and told her to empty her pockets. She did. There was nothing. 2 hours later, the guest found the bracelet in her own suitcase, under a scarf, where she had left it. No apology was ever given. Not that day, not ever. Eleanor went home that night and cried in the bathroom with the door shut. Danielle sat on the hallway floor, back against the wall, listening to every sob through the thin wood. She was 11. She made a promise to herself that night. She didn't know what it looked like yet, but she knew, sitting on that cold floor, that she would spend her life making sure what happened to her mother would have consequences for the people who did it. Howard University. Undergraduate, top of her class. Yale Law School. 10 years as a federal prosecutor. 2 terms as a state attorney general, and then confirmation as the first black woman to serve as Attorney General of the United States. She had not forgotten that bathroom door. Not once. Not for a single day. And now she had a new mission. The Equal Dignity in Commerce Initiative, a federal crackdown on racial profiling in retail. Her office had received hundreds of complaints from black and brown customers who had been followed, refused service, humiliated, or falsely accused in luxury stores across the country. One name kept coming up, again and again: Ashford and Whitmore. Today, at 2:30, Danielle had a formal meeting scheduled with the company's CEO, Charles Ashford, upstairs in the executive suite, to discuss the federal civil rights investigation her office had opened against his company. But she had arrived early, on purpose, not just to buy a silk scarf for her niece Maya, who was about to become the first in her generation to attend college at Spelman, pre-law, but to walk through the front door of this store the way her mother used to walk into rooms. Quietly, without title, without protection. To see what this place looked like from the other side of the counter. She pushed through the glass doors, the cold air hit her face, the piano music swelled, and somewhere across the marble floor, Brittany Wilson looked up from her tablet, frowned, and reached for her radio. Danielle had barely taken 5 steps inside before she felt it. That feeling, the one every black woman knows. The invisible weight of being watched. Not with curiosity, not with interest, with suspicion. The store was enormous. Marble columns stretched toward a ceiling painted with gold leaf angels. Classical music drifted from hidden speakers. The air smelled like sandalwood candles and leather. The kind of leather that costs more than most people's rent. Danielle moved through it all quietly. Her flat shoes barely whispered on the polished floor. She passed the perfume counter, where 2 women in matching pearl uniforms glanced up and then, quickly, looked away. Not a smile, not a nod. Just a look that said, "We see you, and we've already decided." She didn't take it personally. Not yet. She found the scarf display near the back of the ground floor, a long glass case lined with silk, creams and golds and deep burgundies folded into perfect squares, tiny price cards in elegant fonts. The cheapest one was $850. Danielle ran her fingers along the edge of the glass. She was looking for something with magnolias. Maya loved magnolias. Their grandmother used to grow them in the backyard of their Baltimore row house, back when the neighborhood still had yards. "Welcome to Ashford and Whitmore." Danielle looked up. A young black woman stood in front of her, early 20s, warm smile, name tag reading Olivia Bennett. She was the only black employee Danielle could see on the entire floor. "Can I show you anything in particular?" Olivia asked. "Just browsing," Danielle said. "Silk scarves, something with florals maybe." Olivia nodded and began pulling a few options from the case. "We just got a new collection from Milan, hand-painted. Let me show you." She never got to finish. "Olivia." The voice came from behind them, sharp, clipped, like a dog whistle in human form. Brittany Wilson was walking toward them. Her heels hit the marble like gunshots. Her tablet was tucked under one arm. Her jaw was set. "I'll take it from here," Brittany said. "Go restock the handbag wall." Olivia blinked. "I was just helping this customer with—" Did I stutter? Brittany's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Handbag wall. Now." Olivia hesitated. She looked at Danielle with something close to an apology. Then she turned and walked away. Her footsteps were soft, almost ashamed. And just like that, Danielle was alone with Brittany Wilson. Brittany didn't greet her, didn't introduce herself. She just stood there, arms crossed, chin lifted, and looked Danielle up and down, slowly, the way you'd examine a stain on an expensive couch. Her eyes stopped on the dress, stayed there. "So," Brittany said, "you're browsing." "I am." These scarves. Brittany tapped the glass case with one manicured nail. The sound was sharp, deliberate. They start at $850. The ones Olivia was about to show you? Those are $1,200. Each. She paused. Let the number sit in the air like a wall between them. I just want to make sure, Brittany continued, tilting her head, that we're not wasting anyone's time here. Mine, Olivia's, yours. Danielle met her eyes. I appreciate the information. I'd still like to look. Something flickered across Brittany's face. Irritation. She wasn't used to this. Women like Danielle, the ones she had already decided didn't belong, they usually left by now. They'd mumble something, put down the item, and walk out with their eyes on the floor. That was the script. Danielle wasn't following the script. Brittany recalculated and escalated. She turned slightly, just enough to angle her voice toward the two associates at the nearby counter. She wanted an audience. She always did. Ma'am, Brittany said, louder now, performative. I'm going to be honest with you. I've been doing this for 11 years. I can tell within 30 seconds whether someone is a serious customer or a browser. She let the word hang. Browser. The way she said it, it meant something else entirely. And right now, Brittany continued, I'm looking at a browser. She uncrossed her arms and gestured at Danielle's dress, openly, theatrically, like a game show host revealing a losing prize. That fabric? Cotton poly blend at best, off the rack, probably under $100. And honestly, I'm being generous. Her voice carried across the floor like she wanted it to. Our clientele shops in Chanel, in Valentino, in custom pieces that take 6 months to make. She leaned in, not whispering, the opposite. You're not our clientele, ma'am. And I think, deep down, you already know that. Two customers nearby turned to watch. One of them, an older white woman in a cream blazer, raised an eyebrow and nodded slowly, like she agreed, like Brittany was doing her a favor by cleaning up the room. Danielle's jaw tightened, just slightly, just enough that only someone who knew her, really knew her, would notice. But her voice stayed level. I'd like to purchase a scarf, Danielle said, for my niece. She's graduating. How sweet, Brittany said. The word came out like vinegar. But I'm not sure we have anything in your budget. Have you tried the mall on H Street? They have lovely options. Very affordable. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a business card from the sister store, held it out between two fingers, like she was handing a tissue to someone who had sneezed on her. Danielle didn't take it. I'd like to stay here, she said. Brittany's smile disappeared. Something harder took its place. Something uglier. What happened next changed the temperature of the entire room. Brittany turned to a passing associate, Theodore Hayes, the assistant manager. He was mid-30s, pale, and had the permanent look of a man who spent his career avoiding conflict at all costs. Theodore, Brittany said, not quietly. Radio Bradley. Tell him I need security at the scarf counter. Theodore froze. His hand stopped halfway to his earpiece. Security? For what? Just do it. Brittany didn't look at him. Her eyes were locked on Danielle. We have a situation. The word echoed across the polished floor. Situation. Two more customers looked up. A man at the watch counter set down his champagne glass and turned. The piano player's fingers slowed. Even the perfume girls at the front, the ones who hadn't smiled, were staring now. The room had made its decision, not based on anything Danielle said, not based on anything she did, based on her skin, her dress, her refusal to leave when she was told to. 30 seconds later, Bradley Caldwell appeared. He was mid-50s, broad shoulders, a buzz cut going gray. He walked with the weight of a man who had spent 20 years in law enforcement, before taking a quieter job in retail security. He wasn't quiet. He was just waiting for someone to give him permission. "Brittany," he said, "what's going on?" Brittany pointed one finger at Danielle, casually, the way you'd point at a face on a security monitor. "This woman has been lingering at high-value merchandise for over 10 minutes. She has not made a purchase. She does not appear to be a customer." She paused, smiled at Danielle, that same vinegar smile. "I'd like her escorted out, through the side exit." The side exit. Danielle knew exactly what that meant. Every store like this had one. A narrow hallway past the stockroom, past the dumpsters, past the loading dock. The exit reserved for deliveries, garbage, and people they didn't want the real customers to see being removed. The trash exit. Bradley shifted his weight. He looked at Danielle, then at Brittany, then back at Danielle. "Ma'am," he said, not unkindly, but firmly, "would you like to come with me?" Danielle looked at him, then at Brittany, then at the silk scarf behind the glass, cream-colored, hand-painted magnolias curling along the border, the one she had walked in here to buy. "No," she said, simply, "I would not." Brittany's jaw tightened, her nostrils flared. The smile vanished completely. "Excuse me?" "I said no," Danielle repeated. Her voice did not rise. It did not shake. "I'm a customer. I'm standing at a display case. I have not raised my voice. I have not touched anything I wasn't invited to touch. And I am not leaving." The floor went silent. Even the piano stopped. Brittany stared at Danielle for a long, ice-cold moment. Then she turned to Theodore. "Not the time," she said. Her voice was flat now. "Dangerous. I'm starting a formal incident report. If she won't leave voluntarily, we move to the next step." She turned back to Danielle, stepped closer. Her voice dropped low, just low enough that only Danielle, Bradley, and Theodore could hear. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, sweetheart." Danielle almost smiled, because the truth was, neither did Brittany. Brittany Wilson was not the kind of woman who accepted the word no. She had built her entire career on a simple formula. She decided who belonged, and everyone else left. Quietly, quickly, without a scene. It had worked for 11 years. Not once had a customer stood at her counter, looked her in the eye, and refused to move. Until now. And it was making her dangerous. "Bradley," Brittany said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before something breaks. "I need you to check her bag." Bradley looked at the leather tote hanging from Danielle's shoulder. Simple. Worn at the corners. No brand label. He looked at Brittany. Then at the floor. "Brittany, we can't just..." She was lingering near the jewelry case on her way in. I saw it on the monitor. Brittany tapped her tablet twice, like she was pulling up footage. She wasn't. "I have floor authority. Check the bag." It was a lie. Danielle had never gone near the jewelry case. She had walked straight from the entrance to the scarves, in a straight line, on camera. But Brittany said it with such confidence, such practiced, polished authority, that nobody in earshot questioned it. Bradley turned to Danielle. His voice dropped, almost apologetic. "Ma'am, would you mind if I just took a quick look inside?" Danielle looked at him, steady, unhurried, the way a woman looks at someone when she's already 10 steps ahead. "Yes," she said, "I would mind. You have no probable cause. I have not stolen anything, and I would like to speak to this store's general counsel." The words landed like stones dropped on glass. Bradley took half a step back. He felt it, the weight of what she'd just said. Probable cause. General counsel. Those weren't the words of a woman who didn't know her rights. Those were the words of someone who had spent her life enforcing them. But Brittany didn't hear it. She didn't want to. She laughed. Not a real laugh, a performance. She turned to the staff nearby, 3 associates, all watching now, and shook her head slowly, theatrically, the way a teacher shakes her head at a child who gave the wrong answer on purpose. General counsel, Brittany repeated. Oh, honey, you don't get to demand a lawyer in my store. She uncrossed her arms and took a step forward. This isn't a courtroom. This isn't a police station. Another step. Close enough now that Danielle could smell her perfume, sharp, floral, suffocating. This is my floor, and on my floor, I decide who stays and who goes. She let that sit, let it echo off the marble. Then she leaned in even closer and spoke slowly, word by word, deliberately, like she was talking to someone who didn't understand English. You need to leave now. Danielle didn't move, didn't blink, didn't shift her weight. Or what? She said. Something flashed in Brittany's eyes. Not anger, delight. She had been waiting for this, a reason to go further. Or I call the police, Brittany said. She held up her phone, waggled it. And they will come, and they will remove you. Believe me. She dropped her voice to a stage whisper, loud enough for every associate in earshot. They always listen to me. I know them all by name. She turned to her staff, spread her hands wide. The martyr, the protector of civilization. It's unbelievable, isn't it? You try to help these people. You offer them another store. You treat them with patience, with kindness. And this, she gestured at Danielle like she was pointing at a mess on the floor. This is the gratitude you get. These people. The phrase settled over the room like smoke. And what happened next made Danielle's stomach turn. 2 customers, a couple in matching Burberry coats standing near the watch counter, actually nodded. The man lifted his champagne glass slightly, like a toast. Good for you, he said to Brittany. You shouldn't have to deal with this kind of thing. This kind of thing, meaning this kind of person. Brittany glowed. She straightened her blazer, smoothed her hair. She was winning. She knew it. Everyone on this floor had chosen a side, and they had chosen hers. Everyone except one person. Across the floor, behind the handbag display wall, Olivia Bennett stood completely still. Her right hand gripped a leather strap so hard the veins on her wrist were visible. Her left hand held her phone, tucked behind the shelf, screen down, out of sight. The red recording light was blinking. She had been filming for 4 minutes. Theodore Hayes, the assistant manager, stood 6 feet away, arms folded, eyes on the floor. He said nothing, did nothing. He stared at his shoes like a man hoping the ground would open and swallow him whole. The Vivaldi track overhead shifted to a new movement, something lighter, almost playful. Absurdly beautiful, obscenely calm. Like a lullaby playing over a crime scene. Then Brittany made the call. She pulled out her phone, dialed with one hand, held it up beside her ear, speaker tilted outward so the whole floor could hear. She wanted witnesses. She wanted everyone to know she was the one who handled it. Yes, hi, this is Brittany Wilson at Ashford and Whitmore, Connecticut Avenue location. We have a woman refusing to leave the premises. A pause. She looked directly at Danielle while she spoke. African American, mid-50s, wearing well, she scanned the dress one more time, slowly, savoring it. A very inexpensive dress. Possibly trespassing. We need an officer dispatched immediately. Yes, thank you. She hung up, slid the phone into her blazer pocket, crossed her arms, tilted her chin. 5 minutes, she said. They'll be here in 5 minutes. I suggest, strongly, that you make this easy on yourself, sweetheart. Danielle stood perfectly still, hands at her sides, breathing even, face unreadable. She glanced up toward the second-floor balcony. Through the glass railing, she could see the edge of a long conference table, a woman in a gray suit arranging folders, the executive offices. She checked her watch. 1:48 p.m. 42 minutes until her meeting. She turned back to Brittany, and for the first time, her voice changed. Not louder, not sharper, but heavier, older, like she was carrying something she'd been holding since childhood. "I'd like you to think very carefully," Danielle said, "about what you've done in the last 15 minutes." Brittany rolled her eyes so hard her whole head moved. "Save the speech, honey." "I'm telling you as a courtesy," Danielle continued. "Once this goes further, I will not be able to walk it back for you, even if I wanted to." Brittany threw her head back and laughed, full, loud, theatrical. She spun toward Bradley, toward Theodore, toward anyone who would look at her. "Oh my God, did you all hear that? She's threatening me. A woman in a $60 dress is threatening me. In my own store, on my own floor." She turned back, wiped an imaginary tear from her eye, still laughing. "Should I be scared, Bradley? Should I be shaking right now?" Bradley said nothing. His jaw was locked. His right hand hovered near his belt, old habit from 20 years on the force. He looked deeply, physically uncomfortable. But he didn't stop it. Nobody stopped it. Nobody ever did. Then came the moment that changed everything. Brittany stepped forward. Close. Too close. She dropped her voice, but not to a whisper, to a hiss. The kind that's designed to cut and be overheard at the same time. Intimate and venomous. "Let me tell you something, sweetheart, and I want you to really, truly hear me." She tilted her head. Her eyes were flat, empty, like looking into two polished coins. "I don't know what neighborhood you crawled out of this morning. I don't know who told you that you could walk in here and pretend like you belong with these people. But let me make one thing very, very clear." She glanced around at her staff, back at Danielle. "People like you don't shop here." A pause. One heartbeat. "People like you clean here." Clean. The word hit Danielle like a slap across the mouth. Not because it was new, not because it was shocking, but because it was old. So old. 41 years old. For 1 second, just one, the marble floor vanished. The chandeliers disappeared. The piano music and the perfume and Brittany Wilson's cold, painted face, all of it dissolved. And Danielle was 11 again, sitting on a cold hallway floor in Baltimore, her back pressed against the bathroom door, her knees pulled to her chest, listening to her mother cry on the other side. Eleanor Sinclair, in her hotel uniform, being marched through a lobby full of strangers, for a bracelet she never touched, in front of people who had already decided she was guilty before she opened her mouth. No one said sorry. Not that day, not ever. The flashback lasted 1 second, maybe 2. Then Danielle was back, standing in Ashford and Whitmore, silk and marble and Vivaldi, a manager breathing contempt into her face. She closed her eyes, opened them, and nodded. Once. Slowly. The nod of a woman who has just made a decision that cannot be undone. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because upstairs, though no one on this floor knew it yet, Charles Ashford had just looked at his watch. He had turned to his chief of staff and said, "She should be here by now. Go find her." And the elevator light had just turned on. It started with a sound, not a voice, not a shout, just a sound, sharp, urgent, expensive. The rapid-fire click of Italian leather shoes descending a marble staircase. Everyone on the floor heard it. Brittany heard it. Bradley heard it. Even the piano player stopped mid-note and looked up. 3 figures were coming down the grand staircase from the executive level. The first was a man, tall, silver hair swept back, charcoal suit tailored so precisely it looked painted on. His face was tight, not angry, but alarmed. The kind of alarm that lives in the chest of a man who has just realized something has gone very, very wrong. Behind him, a woman in a black blazer carrying a leather portfolio, General Counsel. And behind her, a younger man with an earpiece and a phone pressed to his thigh, Chief of Staff. They were not walking, they were rushing. The man in the charcoal suit, Charles Ashford, CEO of Ashford and Whitmore, reached the bottom of the staircase and scanned the floor. His eyes swept past the perfume counter, past the watch display, past the piano, and landed on Danielle Sinclair. He stopped, completely stopped, like a man who had just stepped on a live wire. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Brittany, who had her back to the staircase, was still mid-performance. She was straightening her blazer, adjusting her hair, glancing at Bradley with a satisfied smirk. She hadn't noticed the 3 figures behind her. She hadn't noticed anything, because she was still living in a world where she was in charge. She was saying something to Theodore, something about the incident report, something about pressing charges. She never finished the sentence. Because Charles Ashford walked right past her, not around her, through her space, like she wasn't there, like she didn't exist. He walked straight to Danielle, stopped 2 feet in front of her, and then, in full view of every employee, every customer, every security camera on the floor, he bowed. Not a nod, not a handshake, not the polite half-bow of a businessman greeting a colleague. A deep, full, formal bow from the waist, the kind reserved for heads of state, the kind that comes from genuine reverence and genuine fear. Madam Attorney General, he said. His voice cracked on the second word. Madam A.G., I am so deeply sorry. I had no idea you were already on the floor. We were scheduled for 2:30, and we should have... He couldn't finish. He was looking at her face, at the calm, at the dress, at the quiet, unshakable dignity of a woman who had just been called a beggar and hadn't flinched. And then, slowly, horribly, he began to notice the rest. The spilled business card on the floor, the security guard standing 3 feet away, the staff still frozen mid-smirk, the 2 customers with their champagne glasses raised in a toast to Brittany's performance. His face changed. The reverence drained out. Something darker replaced it. Madam A.G., he said, quieter now, almost a whisper. What happened down here? Behind him, Brittany Wilson's brain was still catching up with her body, because her body already knew. It started in her hands. They went numb. The tablet slipped from under her arm and hit the marble with a crack that echoed across the floor. Then her chest. A pressure. Sudden, massive, like all the air in the room had been sucked out at once. Then the words. They hit her one at a time, each one heavier than the last. Madam Attorney General. Her right hand shot out, reaching for the scarf display table. Her fingers closed around the edge. Her knees buckled. Not slowly, not gracefully. They just gave out, like someone had cut the strings holding her up. The table went with her. Glass cracked. Silk scarves spilled across the marble in a wave. creams and golds and burgundies sliding in every direction. One of them, the cream one with the hand-painted magnolias, landed at Danielle's feet. Brittany hit the floor, on her knees, surrounded by silk. Her mouth was open. No sound came out. The room held its breath. Olivia, behind the handbag wall, let out one sharp gasp, then a single choked laugh, then clamped her hand over her mouth. Her phone was still recording. Bradley took 2 full steps backward. His back hit the jewelry case. His face was the color of old cement. Theodore closed his eyes. He exhaled through his nose, long, shaking. The breath of a man watching his entire career collapse in real time. The couple in the Burberry coat set down their champagne, quietly. They did not look at each other. They did not look at anyone. Charles Ashford turned to the staff. His voice was steady now, cold, presidential. For those of you who do not know, this is Danielle Sinclair, the Attorney General of the United States. She is here today because this company is the subject of a federal civil rights investigation. He paused, let every word land. She came early, as a personal courtesy, to us. He turned back to Danielle. Madam AG, I will personally, Mr. Ashford. Danielle's voice was quiet, almost gentle. Don't talk yet. Just look. He looked. Brittany Wilson, on her knees, in a puddle of silk, shaking, finally found her voice. It came out broken, a whisper. I didn't know. I didn't know who she was. Please, I didn't. Danielle looked down at her, not with anger, not with triumph, with something much older, much heavier, a sorrow that had been building for 41 years. That, Danielle said, is the entire problem. You didn't know who I was, so you decided who I was. The silence lasted 5 seconds. It felt like 5 years. Then Brittany started talking, fast, desperate, the words tumbling out like a dam had broken. Madam Attorney General, there must have been a misunderstanding. We have very specific loss prevention protocols. There was a report from another customer. I was just following procedure. There was no report. Danielle's voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk. You and I both know that. There was no report. No suspicious behavior at the jewelry case. No protocol that required you to touch my clothing, call the police, or attempt to search my bag. She paused. Let the silence do the work. What there is your security camera, your associate's cell phone, and a dozen witnesses standing on this floor who watched every minute of it. Brittany's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Her hands were shaking. The silk scarves around her knees trembled with her. Charles Ashford had heard enough. He turned to Brittany. His face had gone past anger into something colder, something final. Ms. Wilson, every employee on the floor could hear him. He wanted them to. Stand up. Hand me your badge. Brittany looked up from the floor. Her mascara was starting to run. Mr. Ashford, sir, please. I've worked here for 11 years. I have a family. So does she. Charles didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. So did her mother. So did every customer you have humiliated on this floor for 3 years, while this company was too gutless to do anything about it. He extended his hand, palm up. Brittany's fingers fumbled at her blazer. The badge was pinned over her heart, the spot she had always worn it with such pride. She unclipped it. Her hands shook so badly it took 3 tries. She placed it in his palm. Effective immediately, Charles said, your employment is suspended pending full termination. You will be escorted from this building. He turned to Bradley. You touched a customer without consent. You attempted an illegal search based on a fabricated report. Turn in your equipment to HR before you leave today. You're done. Bradley nodded once. He couldn't speak. Theodore was next. Sir, his voice cracked. For the record, I tried to. You stood there, Theodore. You watched. You said nothing. Charles didn't blink. We'll be having a very different conversation tomorrow. Theodore's eyes hit the floor. He didn't speak again. Charles nodded to two security officers near the front entrance. Fresh faces. Not Bradley. They walked over, helped Brittany to her feet. She was unsteady. Her heels kept slipping on the scattered silk. They guided her toward the side exit. The side exit. The narrow hallway past the stockroom, past the dumpsters, past the loading dock. The same exit Brittany had tried to push Danielle through 20 minutes ago. The trash exit. As she passed Danielle, Brittany tried one last time. Her voice was barely a whisper. Madam Attorney General, I'm a single mother. Please. Danielle didn't respond. She wasn't looking at Brittany anymore. She was looking across the floor, at Olivia Bennett. Danielle walked over, her flat shoes silent on the marble. She stopped in front of the handbag wall. What's your name? Olivia, ma'am. The girl's eyes were red. Her phone was still in her hand. You recorded it, didn't you? It wasn't a question. Olivia's chin trembled. I'm so sorry. I should have said something. I should have. You did everything you were able to do. Danielle's voice was soft, almost motherly. In a room full of people who chose silence, you chose to be a witness. Will you send me that recording? Yes, ma'am. Danielle put her hand on Olivia's shoulder, just for a moment. Get yourself a good lawyer, Olivia, because Mr. Ashford is about to offer you a very significant promotion, and you'll want to negotiate. For the first time in 20 minutes, someone on that floor smiled. Outside the store, the news vans that had been parked half a block away were no longer parked. They were rolling. The press had been stationed for Danielle's 2:30 meeting, a routine public availability. But there was nothing routine about what they just saw. A woman in a blazer, badge gone, mascara streaked, being escorted out the side door of a federal civil rights target. Cameras already rolling, phones already out. By 6 o'clock, every major network in America would have the footage. By 9 o'clock, the whole country would know her name. The video hit the internet at 6:14 p.m., 11 minutes, time-stamped, audio crystal clear. Filmed from behind a handbag display by a 23-year-old sales associate who had the courage to press record when no one else in the room would even look up. Olivia Bennett's hands had been shaking the entire time. You could see it in the footage, the slight tremor at the edges of the frame. But she never stopped filming, not once. By 6:45, every major network in America had the clip. By 8 o'clock, it was the lead story on every cable news channel. By 9 o'clock, two hashtags were trending #1 nationwide, hashtag Madam AG and hashtag Ashford Whitmore. The moment that broke the internet wasn't the insult. It wasn't the dress comment. It wasn't even the illegal bag search or the police call. It was one sentence. People like you don't shop here. People like you clean here. 11 words, delivered by a store manager to the Attorney General of the United States, on camera, in front of a dozen witnesses. The clip was played on loop, morning shows, evening news, late-night monologues. Social media turned it into memes, reaction videos, essays. A 16-year-old in Atlanta turned the audio into a spoken-word poem that got 40 million views in 3 days. And then, the floodgates opened. Within 48 hours, more than 240 former Ashford and Whitmore customers came forward. Black, Latino, Indigenous, Asian American. Their stories were different in the details, but identical in the pattern. A retired federal judge, a black woman in her 70s, told CNN she had once been asked at the DC flagship if she was sure she could afford the handbag she was holding. She had never told anyone, not her husband, not her colleagues. She had carried that moment in silence for 9 years. A pediatric surgeon's husband in Chicago had been accused of stealing his own wallet from his own pocket. Security held him for 20 minutes. No apology, no explanation. A college professor in Boston was followed through the store for 35 minutes. She counted. When she finally asked why, the associate said, "Just making sure everything's accounted for, ma'am." 240 stories. Same company, same pattern, same silence. Until now. The Department of Justice moved fast. Because Danielle Sinclair was the Attorney General, she personally recused herself from the case, standard protocol. The Deputy AG, a former civil rights litigator named Grace Calloway, took the lead. Within 3 months, the DOJ Civil Rights Division filed a formal pattern and practice complaint against Ashford and Whitmore. The investigation uncovered what Danielle had long suspected. Internal training documents, used at all 14 Ashford and Whitmore locations, contained a section titled Loss Prevention Indicators. On paper, it listed behavioral cues, lingering near exits, removing security tags, concealing merchandise. In practice, every single one of the so-called indicators mapped to racial profiling. Non-standard appearance for store demographic, unfamiliar with product pricing, extended browsing without purchase intent. The language was clean. The intent was not. 12 current and former employees confirmed it under oath. They had been trained, explicitly, to watch certain customers more closely than others. The criteria were never written in plain language. They didn't need to be. Everyone understood. The consent decree came down 6 months later. Ashford and Whitmore agreed to the following terms. A settlement of $185 million distributed to verified victims and civil rights organizations across the country. Mandatory bias and anti-discrimination training for all 12,500 employees. Not a one-time seminar, an ongoing, federally monitored program with annual audits. A federal civil rights monitor embedded in the company for 5 years. Full access, no restrictions. A public apology, issued not by the PR department, not by a spokesperson, but by the board of directors, read aloud on live television. Charles Ashford stood beside Danielle Sinclair at the press conference. His hands were steady, but his voice was not. What happened in our flagship store was not an isolated incident, he read. It was a pattern. It was the predictable result of a culture we built, and then chose to ignore. We are sorry. To Madam Attorney General, to every customer we profiled, and to Eleanor Sinclair, whose name we did not know when we failed her daughter, but whose name we will carry for the rest of this company's history. He stepped back from the microphone. He did not take questions. Within 12 months, the board voted to remove Charles Ashford as CEO. He did not fight it. On his way out, he established a personal scholarship in Eleanor Sinclair's name at Howard University, full tuition, renewable, permanent. He told a reporter, off the record, "I deserve to be removed. I built a house and never checked the foundation." As for Brittany Wilson, the Federal Civil Rights Division charged her personally, under color of law statutes, for falsely summoning police based on fabricated claims and racial bias. The responding officer confirmed that Brittany's call contained no verifiable complaint. She had manufactured the emergency. She pleaded down. The sentence was not gentle. 18 months of supervised probation, 500 hours of mandatory community service, assigned to a domestic violence and homeless shelter in Southeast DC. The irony was intentional and unforgiving. A permanent ban from employment in the retail industry, nationwide. Her name entered into a federal civil rights database, and a separate civil lawsuit filed by Olivia Bennett for 3 years of hostile work environment, racial harassment, and retaliation settled privately for a 6-figure sum. Olivia used part of the money to finish her degree. 6 months later, Congress passed a federal anti-retail discrimination provision. It required luxury and large-format retailers to publish annual demographic data on customer complaints and maintain verified reporting hotlines. The provision had no official name in the legislation, but everyone, the press, the public, the activists, the lawmakers, called it the same thing: the Sinclair Rule. And then there was Maya. Maya Sinclair graduated from high school on a warm Saturday in June. Her aunt sat in the 3rd row. No security detail, no cameras, just family. After the ceremony, Danielle handed her a small box wrapped in cream-colored paper. Inside was the silk scarf. Cream, hand-painted magnolias along the border. Charles Ashford had personally couriered it to Danielle's office the morning after the incident, free of charge, with a handwritten note on company stationery. For your niece, with my deepest shame and my most sincere apology. C.A. Maya held it up to the light. The magnolias seemed to glow. She wore it across her chest for every photo that afternoon. The image went viral within hours. 1 year later, the Department of Justice press room was full, every seat taken. Cameras lined the back wall 3 rows deep. The air smelled like coffee and fresh paper. Danielle Sinclair stood at the podium. Behind her hung a portrait she had personally commissioned and fought to place there. It showed a woman in a hotel housekeeper's uniform, navy blue, white collar, name tag slightly crooked. She was smiling, not a big smile, the quiet kind. The kind that belongs to a woman who has spent her life being invisible, but has never once stopped standing. Eleanor Sinclair, taken in 1984. The only photograph Danielle had of her mother, smiling at work. There had been rules about which portraits could hang in the DOJ lobby. Old rules, unwritten rules. Rules about rank and title and legacy. Danielle changed the rules. She did not mention Ashford and Whitmore in her speech. She did not mention Brittany Wilson. She did not mention silk scarves or marble floors or side exits. She didn't need to. The first line of her address was enough. My mother was not a thief. She never was. And neither were any of the women or men or children who have ever been treated like one, because of the color of their skin or the price of their dress. The room was silent. Then, applause. Long. Rolling. The kind that starts in the chest. Somewhere across the country, in a bright office with natural light and a whiteboard full of training schedules, Olivia Bennett stood in front of her own team. 14 people. Diverse. Attentive. She was the new regional director of diversity and inclusion at a competing retailer. Hired not because of what happened to her, but because of what she did about it. She was teaching them something simple, something Ashford and Whitmore never taught her. Every customer who walks through that door, she said, is a person first. Before the clothes, before the wallet, before your assumptions. A person. Start there. Somewhere else, in a department store in Northern Virginia, Bradley Caldwell stood behind a new security desk. Different store, different uniform, same broad shoulders. A young floor manager approached him, pointed toward a black teenager browsing the sneaker wall. Keep an eye on that one, will you? Bradley looked at the teenager, then at the manager. No, ma'am, he said, quietly, firmly. I won't be doing that. I've made that mistake before. The manager blinked, walked away. The teenager kept browsing, unbothered, unaware, free. And somewhere in Southeast D.C., in a fluorescent-lit shelter that smelled like industrial cleaner and instant coffee, Brittany Wilson pushed a mop across a linoleum floor. She wore no blazer, no badge, no heels. She was alone. The hallway was empty. The only sound was the wet drag of the mop and the hum of the overhead lights. She was not redeemed. She was not transformed. She was just smaller. If you've ever been the Danielle in that room, the one who was judged before you spoke, drop an "I see you" in the comments. If you've ever been the Olivia, the one who picked up the phone, the one who told the truth when it was easier to look away, drop an "I see you" too. And if you've ever been quiet, if you've ever watched and said nothing, ask yourself why. Because dignity isn't something you wear, it's something you're owed. And silence? Silence is a choice. Hit that like button if you believe that. Subscribe if you want more stories where the truth comes home, in full, with the receipts. And share this with someone who needs to hear it today. One last thing. In Maya Sinclair's college dorm room at Spelman, taped to the wall above her desk, there are two framed items side by side. The cream silk scarf with the hand-painted magnolias, and her grandmother's old hotel name tag. Beneath them both, in her aunt's handwriting, a single line. Walk into any room like your mother is watching, because somewhere she is.
Here's what I want you to take from this. Every single person who walks into a room is carrying a story you know nothing about. You don't know where they've been. You don't know what they've done. You don't know who they are. All you see is outside, the clothes, the shoes, the skin, and you think that enough to decide whether they matter. It's not. It never was. And that's a mistake most people make. I look at someone and in 3 seconds, they decide this person belongs, this person doesn't, this person deserves my respect, this person doesn't. Based on what? A dress? A handbag? A price tag on someone's outfit? That's not judgment, that's laziness, and it will cost you more than you think. So here's the lessons. Treat people like people first. Before the clothes, before the wallet, before your assumptions. Because the person you look down on today might be the most powerful person in the room. But even if they are not, even if they are nobody famous, nobody important, nobody with a title, they still deserve to be treated like a human being. That's not special treatment, that's a bare minimum. Like, share and subscribe. Real stories, real justice, every week. And remember, dignity isn't something you earn with expensive clothes. It's something every person is born with. Stop pretending you get to decide who deserves it.